All right, this is an installation video for the Dyna Flo Lift Pump. We've bolted this one together here in our shop and just wanted to give some points that makes it a lot easier to install in the future. At this point you could install your panel or your VFD on that panel support. The holes are pre-drilled, or just let your electrician do it. You can work that out with him. You're going to want to bolt this panel support on prior to putting the lid on the tank. And those legs, they'll be marked left or right, so it'll be easy to do. It'll be real easy to identify left from right. The reason we do that is because it's a lot easier to get at those bolts when it's sitting out in the open than when it's on top of the tank. And you got to stand on your head and hang down underneath there to tighten them bolts. So best to do it prior to putting the lid on the tank. So this is what your pump support lid will look like. And we're going to go ahead and set the pump and install that and give instructions on how that's all done too. All right, this is the installation of the actual pump. Where we like to tie on, we use a lifting strap that's rated. So first we loop it over the top of the pump, the whole pipe, and then bring it through the lifting D-rings on both sides. And then in this case, we're going to be lifting it with our forklift. So here in the shop. So always be careful when you're lifting, and make sure everybody's clear before you start lifting. One more thing before we lift it, we have to be careful when we're tailing the pump, and you'll see what tailing is here in a moment, but we have to protect that bearing on the end so that it doesn't drag across the ground and damage that bearing. They're pretty tough, but they're not made for dragging across the ground, so always pay close attention to that. All right, we're getting ready to do the lift. Seth's over here with his strap on one end, and he'll be tailing the pump. And the forklift operator is going to lift that rascal up, so let's go. Pretty easy to do, just takes a moment. Now we'll move it into place. All right, the guys are going to install the screen on the bottom of the pump. This screen comes with each Dyna Flo pump. So they just got 4 bolts. You just tighten those bolts evenly around there, and that'll hold it on there. All right, we've got the screen in place. The pump is over the top of the hole. Now we're going to lower it in. Always be careful that everybody knows that that this is a heavy piece of equipment and the safety is paramount here. If any straps were to slip or chain comes off, everybody needs to be out of the way. So Seth is going to twist this discharge because we're going to be discharging right over towards that hole. And once it sets down in place, then you can always jiggle them around a little bit. They're not that heavy. A center punch and an alignment punch. I guess an alignment punch would work real well in that area. So we're going to get this forklift out of the way, and then we'll move on with the rest of the installation. Now the pump is in place. We got her twisted approximately the right direction. They're just going to move it around a little and get the center punch lined up with one hole. So they'll put one bolt in. Sounds like they got the one on the other side there. Of course, I'm on the wrong side videoing, but once they get one bolt in, then they'll jiggle it around, use the alignment punch, get the other one in, and then the other three are good. So tighten them bolts up, and we move to the next step. Dwayne is going to put some anti-seize on the threads down in there, and once he gets that done, he'll put that drive coupling on. It's important to put either anti-seize or at the very least gun grease on those threads, because that will keep them from seizing up. Both the shafts are stainless steel, but the drive coupling is carbon. So we don't do stainless steel couplers because they have a habit of galling up when you tighten them. So Dwayne's going to put the head shaft on in place. And note, these are left-hand threads. All right, once the shaft is in place, put your first pipe wrench down in there, right on the coupler, kind of back it up against the frame, and then grab your other pipe wrench and pull her tight. That should do it. Once it's set, then you're ready for the next step. All right, this is the electric motor that you'll be receiving with your lift pump. Those lifting bailers come with the motor, and they're intended to lift the motor with, so you have to take those loose. Once you get those off, you remove the bonnet. Then you have to reinstall those bolts so you can lift the motor again. They usually come in and out pretty easily. There you go. And we just use a double hook chain. You want to show them the chain, Seth? And go ahead and hook them on there. There you go. And let's go over one, Seth. Oh, you can't. Sorry. We've got the pump, or the electric motor, up in the air now, and I want to talk about some details. Detail being, underneath this pump there's a register, we call it, which is a machined surface that is designed to fit this machine surface. Once you line the bolt holes up, see, this is what we call a register. Now, it's real important that if this pump or this electric motor has been sitting around, there's no dirt or debris underneath there, so we always wipe that off. Just make sure there's no grease, clumps of dirt, rocks, anything that's going to interrupt the alignment between those two surfaces. So once that is done, then we'll put the motor on. We've got the motor hanging now. These are what are referred to as hollow shaft motors. So that shaft has to pass through the center of it, and there's a drive coupling on top. So we'll get that started in there. And they'll lower right down on there. And the shaft will stick through. There you go. All right, once you've successfully set the motor down and the holes are lined up, there's 4 bolts that you need to just insert. The motor plate is threaded, so you just screw those down, all 4 of them. Before you start this or run this motor for the first time, would not be a bad idea to give each of these grease zerks a couple of pumps of grease. And then from that point, depending on how much the customer runs it, they probably only need to give them a couple shots of grease once a year. So that's really about only maintenance on there. The next components that we're going to install, first thing we put in is a gib key. And once the gib key is installed, then we'll put the head nut on. And then this set screw will lock the head nut where it belongs. So Dwayne's going to show us how to install the gib key and some of the preparation that's needed. Sometimes if the gib key is rough on the edges, you might want to take that out and run it on a file. There you go. Just lay it on the file, and you don't want to take a lot of meat off of it, but if you polish it up a little bit, they go in a lot easier, and better yet, they come out a lot easier. So, and then the gib key is installed. Okay, should go in far enough so that it's flush. And then put the head nut on. Before you put your head nut on, you see there's holes there that are gonna, that screw is going to pass through there into one of them threaded holes. They're hard to see once the nut hits the face of that drive coupling, so you want to mark those. You can mark a couple of them, but go ahead and screw that on, Dwayne. Get the head nut screwed down into place. It should go on relatively easy, and once it makes contact with the drive coupling on top, you give it 2 full turns. One, 2. And he's going to line it up, and he says the bolt's in place. The reason we give it 2 full turns after it makes contact is because that lifts the impeller off the bottom of the volute case. So those 2 turns lifts it up so it just barely makes contact down there. So the impeller is suspended now. Then you screw in the set screw to keep that head nut from moving in the future. There, just snug it up. And then you're ready to put the bonnet back on. There you go. Reinstall the 2 lifting bolts because those are what hold the bonnet in place. When you set the motor on, be sure to pick which direction you want this junction box to be pointing, because the wire will come out the bottom of here from, and it will go down over to the variable frequency drive. All things the electrician's probably going to take care of for you, unless you're in the habit of wiring your own machinery. So that's the way it is for now. We just need to get this thing plumbed up, and once it's plumbed up, we'll run a test and let you see it running. We got the motor all hooked up. We wired it because we do that here at our test stand, and it's hooked to the power, and that's our variable frequency drive. Dwayne's going to start the pump. We got it set at 50 hertz to start, and he's going to hit the button now. And there she is. At 50 hertz. She's bouncing on 800. We'll crank it up here in a second, but I'm sure she's going to make a lot more than that, and she'll have some lift too. So one more thing, once you start the pump, you have to look down in this area, and there's supposed to be water coming from that area, just dribbling down here or on the other side. If there's too much water coming out, more than just a dribble or dripping, that's what cools that packing area. Then you just take a wrench and you turn this one turn or half a turn and do the other side a half a turn until it gets down to the point where you're down to a dribble again. So pretty simple.